How's it going everyone, I'm Pedant Gamer and today I'm doing a quick gameplay commentary on my thoughts on the Killzone Mercenary gameplay trailer. Now, this isn't going to be a particularly long video, largely because the gameplay trailer actually doesn't give us much information. I am going to talk about some other areas, such as comments on some impressions people have given, who've actually been fortunate enough to play the game. We have been given quite a bit of information outside of the trailer, but the trailer really only focuses on one area, and that's the visuals. It's trying to point out, hey, we look like a PlayStation 3 game, which in many ways it does. In many ways it also doesn't. It's very pixelated at times, and there are notable frame rate drops, which is disappointing, but there are still several months for all this to be ironed out. With that being said, the game still does look phenomenal, especially on the Vita screen. Unfortunately though, this is just a side point, you can't actually download the trailer on the PlayStation Vita store or the PS3 store from what I can find. It's not in the trailer section definitely of the PS Vita store. So you've got this huge new game coming out, and you don't even show the trailer off on your store. A very free way to market your game. This is just mind-blowing to me. It's another example of Sony failing to actually advertise their products properly. They have really been dominating, at least in the console market, the actual exclusive market for about 2 years now. They really have been, well, dominating over Nintendo and Xbox from what I can tell. The others have had good exclusives, but Sony have just had a sheer huge number of excellent exclusives, yet really haven't benefited all that much from them. It's just terrible marketing. I really have to point it out, terrible marketing. Speaking about the trailer and the visuals, I should also talk about how it's presented from an audio standpoint, and I'm going to quickly cut here to some of the trailer.
Buy guns. Buy the best. With stealth. With force. For the money.
Now, the actual fidelity of it sounds quite good to me. What doesn't sound quite good is the voiceover, and this is leading into my concern regarding the story that I've presented before. And that is this going to be just another Unit 13 game? Which I really do not want. Now what we have been told is there's several missions, and each one's separate to another. But there is still an overarching story. The story itself seems to be revolving around the child we see in the original reveal trailer. To what extent we don't really know. It seems that he's an ISA official's son, and he's probably being used for blackmail or similar. We don't know yet though. Now, moving away from what we actually see in the trailer, because once again all it really shows off is, hey, this game looks really good and looks comparable. At least not as good as the PS3 version, but it is comparable to the PS3 version in many ways. Let's move on to what we have been told outside of the actual gameplay trailer. Firstly, the multiplayer, and this is the most disappointing aspect I've heard about the game so far, is limited to 8 players. Now that to me is incredibly disappointing. It was disappointing when we heard it was going to be the case in Resistance Burning Skies, which turned out to be a terrible game, so hopefully Killzone Mercenary doesn't head down that path. We've got a much more talented dev team involved this time, which I'll get onto the dev team in a moment, and who's actually making the game as to who it looked like was making the game previously. But 8 players is very disappointing. It's meant to be a very team-focused game, especially as there's going to be 3 game modes, which will be no doubt Guerrilla Warfare, which is Team Deathmatch. There's also a free-for-all mode, which is the first time that has existed in a Killzone series, which does make sense given that you are playing as mercenaries this time, although I imagine the actual team-based modes you'll be playing as the ASA and Helghast again. And then thirdly is just Warzone, which is a mixture type of multiple different objective modes. Now, what is interesting about this is how it's going to all work. The map's still going to be fairly large, because Killzone 2 in particular had fairly large multiplayer maps, and Killzone 3 did, but to a smaller extent from what I recall as well. Now, these maps just don't support 8-player play. They just would be spending far too much time looking for other players or hiding in a corner sniping people. It would not work, so presumably the maps are going to be a lot smaller this time, and how they actually pull that off I'm actually quite concerned about. I don't actually think that really suits the Killzone series, although I guess the smaller maps for the free-for-all mode at least would work. But for the actual more team-based objectives, if it's going to play like previous Killzone games, just doesn't seem like it'll work. However, I hope to be proven wrong. Now, I did mention the dev team. One thing I should say is that we have finally got confirmation as to who is making this game. At first it was Cambridge Studios was developing the game, and then when the original reveal trailer came out it said Guerrilla Games was making it. So this caused a bit of confusion, and what it turns out has occurred is Cambridge Studios has just become part of Guerrilla Games. We see this at the start of this new gameplay reveal trailer, with it saying Guerrilla Games Cambridge underneath. It's fairly simple. Cambridge Studios have developed the game, not the original developers of Killzone, or at least Killzone 1, Liberation 2 and 3. Instead, Cambridge Studios have done it just under the new name of Guerrilla Games Cambridge. This isn't a bad thing. They were involved with doing additional work on Killzone 2, and they are a very talented dev team. They did games like Medieval, but it is still disappointing that A, Cambridge Studios doesn't exist as they used to anymore, although if it's just a name change it's not really that big of a deal, and B, that the actual initial teams aren't really all that involved in this from what we can tell, although they'll probably be just doing a general overview. But then again, so was Insomniac with Resistance from what I remember, and that game turned out terrible. However, once again, Nihilistic was a terrible dev team, and Cambridge Studios from their history have been a fairly good dev team, so I'm actually not all that disappointed. I am disappointed in the extent that I would like the original team to be still involved, and maybe they are, but we don't have any confirmation of that. But nonetheless, they are a talented dev team, and it'd be interesting actually to see what a new dev team brings to the Killzone universe. Hopefully they can actually add to the lore and not just have it as a nice addition that's kind of fun to play but doesn't really add anything to the universe. I think that's something they want to avoid, just being a game that can be ignored entirely and you don't need to know about to actually understand all the lore behind Killzone. I'm also hoping they're able to drop hints at what has caused this new conflict in the Killzone Shadowfall, the upcoming PS4 game, which is essentially Killzone 4. It probably will be subtitled Killzone 4 in the end, as number games do tend to sell better than games of the same series without a number, but we shall see. Now, there are several areas I can nitpick about this trailer. For example, when the ISA soldier gets stabbed, his facial animation doesn't exist. It's just a very static blank expression as he's getting stabbed, which of course is something I hope they can fix before release. But the main thing I think this trailer was trying to convey was, hey, we look very comparable to a PS3 game, and it's an FPS that probably or hopefully isn't going to suck on the Vita. And they actually did a very good job of actually conveying that. Now hopefully they can actually just make sure that people actually see this trailer. Like, they put it on the PlayStation Store, for example, for people to download would be a very good start. And then again, that's expecting that Sony knows how to actually advertise their products, which maybe they do, and maybe they'll blow us away with the PS4. They did a decent job on February 20th with the PS4 reveal, although they didn't actually show what the PlayStation 4 will look like. So hopefully they're turning things around and they'll actually be able to market their games and products properly from here on in. Especially as Vita really could use a boost in sales right now. And I actually just remembered one last thing I wanted to comment on. One thing I was very concerned about as a result of games like Uncharted Golden Abyss is the actual swiping across the screen. The actual touch screen functionality. Why was I concerned about this? Because it absolutely sucked in Uncharted Golden Abyss. It was terrible. I'm not actually going to spoil how bad it is at times in Uncharted Golden Abyss, but it was to the detriment of the game. Let's put it simple. It was to the detriment of the game, and I'm kind of still concerned about that in Killzone. However, it seems to be being used for brutal melees, and it's been added that it'll be a random swipe on screen that also allows you to deflect the person doing it. So in multiplayer, if someone runs up in Killzone 3 and brutal melees you, you're dead. Whereas in this, they'll try and brutal melee you, and you can quickly swipe the screen to knock them off you and stop them being able to brutally melee you, which would be fantastic because it was very annoying when people would just run up to you, through a wave of bullets and stab you in the face. Yes, it was satisfying when you did it to someone, but so often it was used as a very cheap tactic, and this is a way of actually adding more skill to that kind of gameplay. Hopefully, at least. In any case, that's me done for this video. This is Pedantic Gamer. I do hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please consider giving a like and or subscribe, as it really does help me out. And I do hope to see you next time.